Welcome to True Restoration Live. Matthew here. Stephen on the show again. Thank you, Stephen, for joining me today.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for us getting started. Waiting for us to start a little late. Just have some issues with our microphone today, but we got that settled.
Tech issues, they're always there. Well, we actually have had, so to give context, the last few shows we've talked about business and stuff. Stephen shared a lot of his experience because he has a lot of direct experience building and running businesses. We've actually received a lot of positive feedback and a lot of interest, so we're going to do more of these. Now, in the last show, we actually had some comments, questions that we were actually unable to get to. So we're going to continue. We're going to start this show by going through those first. So, Stephen, we had, and I'll throw it to you, but we had someone ask here, basically, what's been your experience building business networks among traditional Catholics around building a profitable business? Any lessons? Anything good to share around that for the audience?
I want to start with that, but I do remember that I promised something in the last stream and then I didn't deliver. So
okay.
I wanted to start with that one.
Go with that first.
Which is I promised talking about the briefcase technique.
Oh, yes, that's right.
We didn't talk about it, right?
Yeah.
So I want to start with the briefcase technique, and I'm going to dump right back into the question you posed.
Yeah.
So for those who didn't hear about it before, I had said that I used the briefcase technique to get me about $100,000 in revenue across 2 different clients. And this was actually introduced to me by Ramit Sethi when he appeared on a podcast. I then went to the producer of that podcast with the technique and got in. Now, the technique is, the reason it's the idea of the briefcase is I'm going to a job interview or I'm interviewing to be a vendor. And the person says, well, why should I choose you? And you reach into your briefcase and you pull out an idea. Say, well, if I were working here, I would do this. And in fact, I've already done it. Here you go. And this one's for free, whether you hire me or not. But if you do hire me, here's how much I'm going to charge. So you don't talk about a theory of what you would do. And I don't know if Matt's ever talked about this, but he briefcase technique True Restoration a million years ago. He talked about the fact that he wasn't happy with our audio quality. He corrected the audio quality of one of our episodes. And he said, I just wanted to let you know what we could do. I said, well, we're going to hire you. That's what we're going to do. And, the rest is history. So I briefcase techniqued one of these podcast hosts by saying, and this would have been back in, I want to say 2012, 2013, 2014, in which I had said, you have all of this podcast content. Because this person was on maybe episode 340 something of his podcast at that point. And keep in mind, this is 2012, 13, 14. People are still it's not the golden age of podcasts yet. And I'd said, I can take some of your old episodes and resurface them as articles. So I can go back and listen. And keep in mind, those episodes weren't necessarily great listening experiences, but there were some good nuggets in there of content. So I can resurface it and help you win SEO. And in fact, here's what I did. I did a couple articles for you and they're free. And I included them in my introduction. I said, I just want to say thank you for all the work you've done. I just wanted to offer this as sort of a love offering. Thank you. But if you do want me to do this, it's going to be $75 per article. That's what I said. He said yes. And I was basically, I think I was doing 8 of those a month, and then it accelerated. And at one point I had to hire a team because I was doing, 20 or 30 of these a month. But when I did the math, it ended up, I think, being $46,000 worth of work, direct revenue from the briefcase technique for that. I was then able to say to another client, oh, I already do this for this podcast, which was an iTunes top 50 podcast. Well, I already do that. And the person, because he did his due diligence, reached out and said, oh, how's Stephen been for you? Oh, great. He does XYZ. Okay, great. I guess I'm going to have to hire you now because I now have the social proof. The thing is, that person didn't know that I had briefcase technique my way into the first one.
Yeah.
And so briefcase technique is leading with value. You didn't talk about what you could do if you worked for them. You demonstrate by a deliverable, a touch of your quality, a taste of your quality, and because you don't want to ambush somebody and say, well, now you owe me this money. Well, the person will say, I never asked you to do this for me. You just offer it as a gift and say, this one's free,
Yeah.
but if you want any more in the future, here's the price. And either way, thanks for your work.
And the return on your investment of time. I mean, if you made your business made 46K. Now, obviously, we're talking revenue, not profit, but let's just look at it at face value. Surely that's a good return on investment. And I think the thing as well with that, which is a briefcase technique, giving away something for free, yeah, you want to do it, be strategic with it. And if people still say no, like, cool. Like, you're probably going to give away some free value and then people aren't going to return the favor. That's cool. But there's going to be one, and it could be a $46,000 client. So I think that's great.
So one episode delayed, but we finally talked about the briefcase technique. So going back to this question from Augustine Mary. So building business networks among traditional Catholics, it's not any different in the natural order from building business networks among regular people. And by that, I mean grace builds on nature. So having traditional Catholics isn't necessarily just going to make it better because you're with traditional Catholics. If you don't have the fundamentals of business down, that just means you're going to screw up with Catholics, not just screwing up with secular people. So you have to have the fundamentals down. And so when I'm talking about building a business network, let's just go back to what we were talking about, which is leading with value. What is it that the business network is going to accomplish? Are you trying to develop leads? Are you trying to share business knowledge? Are you trying to create opportunities for hot seats where people come with their business problems and you can help critique and offer changes? That you have to be clear on what the purpose of that is. So with the different business networks I've built, the purpose of the network has to be at the forefront. With, for example, let's say True Restoration. When we were looking for people to work within True Restoration, we made it clear that we were definitely going to compensate people because we didn't believe in volunteers, but that you were still going to be held accountable. Because this was a Catholic project didn't mean that we would say, well, it's all about charity. So if you mess up on a project, then we're not going to say anything because Catholicism is about forgiveness, right? That
True Restoration's a real hard one as well because it's one of those things where it's clearly people believe in the mission. Let's be real, you're not going to make millions of dollars off something like True Restoration. It's just not going to happen. Like, if you want to make a lot of money, you don't volunteer or work for True Restoration, at least not from that as the vehicle. But at the same time, they do charge money and they have a higher quality than free stuff. It's a challenging business model for that kind of thing. Yeah.
But what we were trying to do there was still use the regular business models of how does a subscription business work, et cetera. So in building business networks there, part of what you're trying to do with selecting people is trying to find out how do you know them? Do they come recommended from someone else who you know and trust? And one of the big mistakes I think people make is saying, oh, because this person's traditional Catholic, he or she is a good guy or a good girl, you just get a sticker and you get a pass. And I think that people have to vet who comes in. And part of that is we all are learning things. And you don't know whether someone is a stable, sane individual for a while. I know we may like to believe that we have some special meter going around. Oh, I know that person's a good person. Well, I mean, maybe.
Well, they might be a good person, but they actually might not be qualified for the role that you need. There's just people have different skills, and you get skills and traits by learning stuff, by being, I guess, just who you are as a person. Yeah, and I agree with this. I do see this sometimes where it's almost like, oh, because they're traditional Catholic, they're going to be a great fit. It's like, no, we're getting to secular science here. Like and I think this goes to the networking thing, Stephen. I think that it's kind of, how would you phrase it? I think you're really limiting yourself if you only restrict your business network to traditional Catholics. Because the fact is, there's actually more secular people out there, which therefore means that there's probably more people, secular people out there, that are actually better at business than a lot of traditional Catholics. So it's like cool, learn from them. I think kind of just restricting your network based on religion, in my opinion, is a little bit dumb. But I don't know if you've got thoughts on that.
No, well, I think that it depends on what it is that you're trying to build. So I would say one of the failures slash lessons I had was looking at trying to build networks or cooperation agreements for men outside of a Catholic framework. So there was a time period, I would say in 2016, 17, 18, where I was involved in different businesses that were focusing on creating good quality content and communities for men in general, obviously with a traditional worldview, quote unquote, traditional worldview. But it wasn't an explicitly Catholic organization, just even though the sort of people I attracted were, let's say, majority Catholic, even majority traditional Catholic. But what it did was it meant that there were certain areas that were cordoned off from discussion because of the greater mission. The greater mission was we're trying to form better men and have conversations. And with some people, we were starting with people who were fatherless, who were trying to find good models of fatherhood. And so you have different starting points. And one of the lessons I took away from working in those and building those types of businesses was, for me and my house, I don't want to be involved in building something for men outside of Catholicism and outside of traditional Catholicism, and then outside of non-una cum traditional Catholicism, and then outside of, keep going, people who think it's okay to go to SSPX masses. Like, I didn't want to have anything to do with people who think like that. And so depending on the scope of your project, you may want to get very narrow, and maybe that's you and 7 people, or you want to get really wide. And I think it's easier. The thing that Matthew's referring to is if I want to have a group focused on SEO. Well, you don't need to be traditional Catholic to be a subject matter expert on SEO.
Yeah, and just to give clarity, I just realized the way my last thing I said, agree with Stephen, which is what is the purpose? So yes, if you like for this specific project, I do want this criteria, brilliant. But to kind of only make your only business network, that is what I was saying is a bit stupid. Like, you kind of don't want to just limit yourself purely to that, but for a specific project, if you're like, I want a purpose behind this particular network group, you can absolutely be as narrow as you want. Absolutely.
So I think that that's the main way I would answer that is begin with the end in mind. So obviously you're going to hear me go back to Stephen Covey, like, almost every time. This is sort of a trick you can play with Stephen, as you just push a button, some Stephen Covey, idea comes out. But begin with the end in mind. And if I'm working on something Catholic, I think sometimes it pays to be as restrictive as possible so that everyone is rowing in the same direction with the same zeal and spirit. And if it's something more general and specific, that's actually a great opportunity for you to be a light to others about your Catholicism. So if you're working in a graphic design project with people, maybe you're only the only traditional Catholic. And so let's say you're on a meeting and people are saying, what are you having for lunch today? And you say something casual like, well, it's Friday, so I can't do meat today. And then you get a bunch, and I'm not doing that accidentally, right? That's a little bomb I'm throwing so that people can say, well, Steve, are you vegetarian? No, I'm not so immoral as to be a vegetarian. And then you keep going with that. But the point is, then they say, well, why is it that you don't eat meat on Friday? Oh, it's this old Christian tradition. I'm observant of that. Trust me, there's nothing more that I want than a burger on a Friday, but here's what's going on. And then people get to hear, and they hear it from somebody who isn't some unhinged crazy, because that's what they always want to put religious, quote unquote, religious people into a box. But then you're there calmly talking to them about something you're passionate about your faith, and now they're challenged. And so that's a great opportunity for a professional network, a business network, to be a chance of the apostolate in a very oblique, tangential, light, easy way to open conversations with people. And that goes back to the idea of, preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words. That what does the way that you conduct yourself with people say about your faith? And does that encourage people to learn more about your faith? So that's what I would say is beginning on what the end is in mind for your business network, be as narrow or as wide as necessary, because I think that will be a better fit for how you look at things.
Yeah, that's good. And I'll just quickly show a comment from Alexander Peterson. Good information. Thanks for doing a show on this. No problem at all. And thank you very much for the comment as well. Let's continue. So I don't know if we want to talk about this at all, Stephen. It's just a future episode idea from I think Augustine as well, Austin. And the concept is how truly profitable businesses could be compared to regular jobs. We talked about that a little bit in the past episode, but don't know if you want to share some more on this one.
Why don't we just look at it from the idea of what margin is, net margin, gross margin, and realize that different businesses work differently. And something I've always been fascinated about is the hospitality restaurant business. But my very first business mentor, he and his family own 13, 14 restaurants. His business card says grandson of the founder. So he's pretty honestly quite humble about his success. But he had always told me that it takes a particular type of DNA to run a restaurant because you work evenings, weekends, holidays, and it's a grind. And you always have to keep earning business. You can't be complacent. But the book that crystallized this for me was Restaurant Man by Joe Bastianich. And in it, Bastianich underlines the idea that you're really only looking at a blended 20% margin at the end of the day. So if you do $1 million in revenue, you're looking at $200,000 at the end of the year in net. That's after you pay your bills, your regular salaries. You as the owner may take a salary. That's $200,000. And so the work that it takes to bring in $200,000 of additional profit in a year is a lot. So when you look at, say, $1 million in revenue in a restaurant, that is intense. However, $1 million in a solopreneur consulting business does not involve the same amount of machinery it takes to run a restaurant. And the margins may be enormous because when you're looking at a restaurant, you're talking about cutlery, you're talking about knives. Bastianich and my mentor, Ron Salisbury, would talk about the fact that he would pay people who found knives or forks in the trash because as they were accidentally, as they were cleaning, maybe a fork got lost and it wasn't worth, they would pay something like a $5 bonus. Well, that fork wasn't worth $5, but what he was teaching was attention to detail so that people weren't losing things. He would pay people for reading books and writing a one-page report about that book. So he was encouraging learning among his people. But if you're running a one-person consultancy, you don't have any dishes. You don't have any, laundry to do. You don't have to pay payroll. You don't have to pay someone to read books. So your margin can be significant. And even if you hire contractors, you can have a significant margin. The point that I made in our last live stream about this is there is a ceiling for jobs in terms of income outside of sales. Sales is that great unknown. Really, you could say ceiling's unlimited depending on the type of selling that you're doing and the volume of sales that you can do within the time that you're given. Because there's also a sales cycle. Sometimes the sales cycle is 90 days or 120 days on a certain type of product or service. Or for software, it's paid differently. So all I was trying to say is that a regular job is only ever going to give you a regular income, no matter how good that is. And let's say you get a 5% raise every year, that's great. But a business performing at a certain level in which you can tweak the knobs, you can vote yourself a 200% pay raise the next year. You could do that reasonably. That's not science fiction. There is no universe in which you get a 200% raise outside of sales in the working world. So when we're talking about profitable businesses compared to regular jobs, there's no comparison. If you want a regular steady income, a regular job is going to go fine for you. But the point that we were trying to make in the last live stream is that a business gives you so much more freedom, so much more opportunity, and so much more chance to write your own work day. How is it that I want to work? How is it that I want to build my schedule? And then relate that to the income that I want to make. And this is so much more incumbent upon fathers of families because they have people they have to provide for. A single person, it's a real luxury. You do whatever you want. You can make as little or as much money as you want because you're the only person. I would argue coming the traditional Chinese practice is the eldest child has to send money to his parents regardless, right? So I only have one living parent. I send money to my mother. She doesn't really need it, but it's still an obligation that I'm fulfilling. And that would be something that you could do more readily if you have a business. I'm not saying that people who have jobs can't do that, but
Yeah, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly. And what I would say as well, just sort of, I guess, another layer, a nuance, is like Stephen mentioned, there's certain business models that, can take more cash and you have less margins. Doesn't mean you don't do it, but one thing I guess is for people to consider, because I think it can be easy for people who maybe do have a regular job to think, oh my gosh, I can just start a business. It's like, that's really good. Obviously, you want to make decisions based on your circumstances. But one thing to probably consider as well, this is more for people, I think, who maybe they're considering shutting down their day job to go all in on business, which is generally not recommended, by the way, unless you've got experience in business. But one thing to kind of consider, I would say as well, is the business that you're going into a vehicle that is actually likely to get you past that ceiling that you're getting at your day job? So examples, if you did want to say, oh, I want to start and open a cafe or restaurant, like the amount of risk you're taking, you actually might have more financial freedom with a day job. But let's say you go, oh, well, hey, if I do this, I'm just going to make something up. I become like a drywall professional. Hey, this is pretty cool. I get a client, they pay up front or a certain amount, and they cover the cost of materials. So this is definitely going to have a more likely chance of actually making more than my day job. I don't specialize in drywall. I'm just making an example up. But I think that's just another thing I think for people to consider. So considering, I guess, the negative as well as the positive, so you can make that informed decision at the end of the day.
So segueing into the third question, I thought was an interesting one. Conflict resolution in business, both theory and experiences as a future video idea. And I think both of those, Matthew, could be good ones. The how profitable businesses can be compared to regular jobs and conflict resolution could be entire episodes. But again, commenting briefly, just to try to not wait till we do a full episode to answer. Conflict resolution, I think, is highly tied, not just in business, but in life, to personality. And Matthew knows this better than I do because he's a father of a family. I only know it tangentially as an uncle, which is that not every child can be treated and disciplined in the same way. The different children need different incentives and different ways. It would be nice. That's the easiest thing. A parent and an uncle would like there to just be a universal rule. You do this, this is what happens. And that's easy. But the problem is, what are you looking for? You have a certain desired outcome that you want from the child. You want them to learn from their experience and you don't want them to do it again. Or if it's a positive behavior, you want them to do that positive behavior again. So that is not always going to be reinforced the same way with different children. So what is their personality type? Is this a sanguine? Is this a melancholic? Or if you're a Myers-Briggs person, if you want to go, INTJ, ENFP, whatever that might be, make sure that you're making corrections or giving praise in accord with personality. Now, when that comes to conflict resolution, you need to be very clear on what motivates your employee or your contractor. Is this someone who's motivated primarily by money? And people might laugh and say, well, Stephen, it's all about money. That's why people have jobs. Like, maybe that's what you think, but there are plenty of people who are motivated by recognition, by words of affirmation, that, feeling like they did something good in the world. There's plenty of people, money is a secondary concern. It doesn't mean it doesn't matter to them. It means there's something else that matters more. So when you're looking at conflict resolution, you have to ask yourself, I'm going to Stephen Covey again, begin with the end in mind. What is it that you're hoping to achieve in this conflict resolution? Do you want to counsel this employee so that this person can be better? Are you looking to scold them so you can feel better about yourself? Or are you looking to fire them? Whatever the end is going to guide the so-called conflict resolution. And you have to ask yourself, is this employee capable of going to this level? And if I use numbers here, I am not hopeful that I can coach an employee who's performing at a 4 to a 5 or a 6. That means I'm taking them from bad to mediocre. I'm only hoping to take people from 6 or 7 to 8 or 9 when I'm talking about counseling for improvement or conflict resolution. If someone sold me that they were a 6 or a 7, I find out that they're actually a 5 and sometimes they're a 4. Conflict resolution may not be in order. Firing that person might be in order because that's the best thing for everybody involved. I'm not going to spend time taking someone who is bad to hopefully get them to mediocre. Think about that change. If I move someone from a 4 to a 6, that's 2 points. I've moved them to mediocre. They used to be bad. Is that the best use of my time as a business owner, is counseling someone to move from bad to mediocre? Or do I need to hire somebody who is better than mediocre as a starting point and say, I made a bad hiring decision here? So I think that's where I would just like to make a brief comment. When it talks about conflict resolution, think about what it is that you're trying to achieve from this interaction. Not just tied to personality, but tied to motivation. What is it that motivates this person?
And it's such a broad question, right? Like conflict resolution could be, like you've just talked about, employee/contractor relationship. It can also be customer relationship. I've definitely had, situations with my clients where something's happened or I can see that something's brewing and I'm like, oh, we got to get on the front foot with this and turn this around. And actually, Stephen, a book that you recommended has actually been extremely helpful, which is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And negotiation, it's a book on negotiation, which I think pretty much ties into conflict resolution. Really highly recommend that. Actually, really recommend that book. And even Chris Voss has YouTubes as well. He's a ex-hostage negotiator for the FBI. Very, very good. But I think the general rule of thumb is this, at least some things I've found, is always try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. It's that, like, don't sort of be, is it, what do I want? How do they do this to me? This is so, it's like, if you're feeling like that, cool off, because you'll probably say something that's not going to be helpful. If you do speak with them, but go, what is it that they want? And if you don't know, here's one thing. Here's a hack that I've found. With conflict resolution, even as an employee, as a side business owner. Jump on the phone. You can try, if there's things brewing, don't do it on email, don't do it on chat. You jump on the phone, you get your tonality. Hey, yeah, it's just Matt here. You got 2 minutes. Yep, cool. Hey, I just noticed, I just want to chat about XYZ. I was just looking at this, and boom, start the conversation. Don't come in never be defensive, and get them talking. Oh, yeah, Matt, I'm just concerned because I think I'm overpaying for this. Oh, well, actually, you've got this part of your plan that you might not need, but this part you might want to keep. Would that help? Yeah, that'd be great. Can we save $200 a month? Job done. Everyone's happy. So it's sometimes just getting on the phone and figuring out what's going on is just the best way to move forward.
Very much so. And if you, for some reason, you can't connect on the phone, use something like Loom, where they can see your tonality. They can see that you're not mad or angry, and that text is now mitigated. Text messaging or email can sometimes be so cold, and all it takes is using a Loom or using some other technology in which they can see your face, they can see you smile, and that makes everything easier.
Actually, yeah, I do that a lot. I even had one that we had a business that now pays us, and throughout the sales cycle, I was sort of sending Looms, explaining the quotes and stuff. And then, like, she jumped on the phone with me, the business owner, towards the end. And she's like, I feel like I just know you. Like, I've just seen so many Looms you. I've hardly ever seen her, but she's just like, you could tell she's more friendly because it's that thing there. So that's another good hack.
It's a hypercharge for building a relationship. And it's a real competitive advantage in sales because they're not just interacting with a cold email anymore. They're interacting with a person who is using their name, making references to things. And to build on Matthew's point, if you don't know what motivates your employees, if you don't know their children's names, if you don't know, that their mom is ill about something, that's a failure on your part. I'm not saying that you have to be best friends with your staff, but if you don't know the important people in their life and what's important to them, then you're just treating them as economic ciphers. They're just there to serve you, and that's not how you build a long-term relationship with anybody. Now, that I just making a brief comment there, something my first business mentor told me, Stephen, the longest that you should expect to keep good staff, the very longest is 2 years. It doesn't matter that you feel that they really love your company and love working for you. They have their own hopes and dreams. Do not mistake their being a good employee for you and being engaged and being connected for wanting to work for you for the rest of their lives. So anything beyond 2 years, you should see as an incredible gift. And this was coming from somebody who had like 20-year employees working for him. But his advice was 2 years at the very most. So protect yourself in that way. Don't feel entitled. Don't feel someone's going to stay with you forever. That's just delusion talking.
Yeah, and I think this happens more in the small business world. And we've got a question in the comments I'll get to in a sec, but I have heard a lot when like an employee leaves and then the business owner or the manager suddenly just goes dark on them. Like, how could they do this to me? It's like, dudes, it's a job. Like, it's just it's making money. Like, don't need to take it so personally. So yeah, I'd never vibe with that, and always thought honestly it was just idiocy. But let's go on to this question by Alexander Peterson. Questions for the panel. What would you recommend for writing and commentary? How about book publishing? It seems these would be reliant on donors. So I think Alexander's asking about the concept of a book publishing business, Stephen. I might throw to you for this one.
Sure. Well, let's start with the second one first. So book publishing, I've been fortunate enough to be involved in the publishing of maybe a dozen books now. And there's really a lot of different models. The first ones that I did were privately financed by an individual who believed in the books, and it was debt financing. So at no interest, actually, it was no interest debt financing. We were just given, let's say, tranches of like $2,000 or $5,000 to publish certain books. As we made money from the books, we were then able to, excuse me, we were then able to pay back the loans. We were paying that as we went. What people have to realize with book publishing is the markup is significant. And obviously, the more books you print, excuse me, the more books you print, the more money you can make. So let's say it costs you $5 a book when you print 500 books. But if you print 1,000 books, maybe it costs you $4 a book or $3.50. It really is that small. It isn't much bigger. Like, oh no, now it's suddenly 50 cents a book. That's not how it works. Especially if it's hardcover, especially if you have special design elements. So with books, one element is you have what you refer to, a wealthy donor. And sometimes those donors will gift you that money. For example, IHS Press, I think, had a wealthy bequest from a widow. And that's how I think they published their first, 16, 17 books, was off of that bequest. So you could have a donor give you money. I then also helped Father Cekada do a crowdfund for Work of Human Hands, the first edition. He didn't know about it, but Father was so great about being open to technology that I'm pretty sure it was the first ever, and maybe only ever, traditionally Catholic book that was crowdfunded. And if you look at how important Father Cekada's book was, the fact that it was crowdfunded is still very funny to me. That there were so many people that were enthusiastic, but it was an open source platform. I brought a Sony Handycam. I shot a video of Father. We edited it. We uploaded it as the 3-minute, like, here's the video here's the project that we're building. And then we sold something like $7,000-8,000 worth of books in pre-order. It only cost us maybe $4,000 to print. And so we were profitable before we printed a single book. But Father didn't necessarily have that money to print it. So all we did was we pre-sold it. And I'm a big Kickstarter person. I backed several Kickstarter projects this summer, including a new carry-on luggage that I'm really enthusiastic about. We could talk about that some other time. But with publishing, if there's a demand for it, you can crowdfund your way to completion. The project that I'm involved with at the moment in publishing is Monsignor de la Sousa's Anti-Christian Conspiracy, which is being published by Shield of Faith Press. That is a 900-page book that is being released in 100-page installments. The 100-page installments are being sold for a certain amount, and the people who buy all of the 9 installments, they're going to be given a right to purchase 5 copies of the finished, beautiful hardcover edition at a huge markdown, effectively something like 75% off the cover price, for 2
Because
reasons.
at that point, you've done the work.
Well,
yeah, so you go.
Firstly, they've already paid the full price by buying 10 copies of the trenches. Now, that might be fun too. They can point on their shelf and say, I helped make this book a reality. I helped bring one of the most important Catholic works of the 20th century into print from French into English. They can point to that. But we also want to recognize that by giving them a chance to buy finished versions, I think 5 finished versions, for a certain discount, and give those as gifts, because the price is going to be much more, because by that point we've collected the funds to print the nice version, because we've been doing the crowdfunding all along. So we're not spending the editions that are coming out now from Shield of Faith Press. They're not fancy editions. In fact, I happen to have one with me here. They're not fancy editions, but they're durable. They'll last. They're not going to fall apart on you. But the people who are there and on the ground helping, they should be given access to that. So with book publishing, there's really so many ways you can do it. And now crowdfunding is so normal, versus people were very shocked when Father Cekada did it. We did it for the True Restoration, did it for the Anti-Modernist Reader as well. And with that one, we offered a chance for people to be listed in the first edition as benefactors of the book. And some people put saints' names, or they did it in honor of a dead relative or in honor of a saint. So their names are still in the back now that it's moved on to the second edition. They'll always be commemorated. So people respond. This goes back to what we were saying. What's the incentive? What motivates people? Some people want to put their name down. Some people want to put a saint's name down. There's no correct answer. The point is, allow people leeway for what it is that they want to be remembered for. Now, with writing and commentary, I'm a big Substack person. And I say this because I've been on Substack for the Palestine Bookshelf project that I work on for not even a year. It's not even been a full year. So that project started October 7th.
So, Stephen, what's for the audience? Because I don't know as well. People might be thinking, what's Substack?
Sure. So going back to the idea of what were newspapers going to do when advertising no longer paid the bills? And this is probably opening to a greater discussion, a philosophical point that I have that I always raise, which is advertising cannot pay for the internet. The internet has too many things to think that advertising is going to pay for it all. The internet has to be paid for directly with money. So you're going to have, if you want a creator, you're going to have to give the creator $5 a month, $10 a month, $15 a month, $20 a month, $50 a month. That's how you're going to get it. People thinking, well, if I just pay Hulu or Netflix $10 or $15 and I can get all you can eat, that works for those companies because they have millions of subscribers. So millions of subscribers paying them $10 means they've got a lot of money. But when you're a smaller creator, you need actually people paying you a lot more. You need people paying you $50 a month, $25 a month in order to enable what you're doing. And Matt, I don't think we talked about, did we talk about 1,000 True Fans in our last?
I don't think we did.
Okay. So this the 1,000 True Fans concept is integral to talking about writing and commentary. So Kevin Kelly wrote an article many, many years ago. It was called 1,000 True Fans. But the premise of the article was on how independent musicians could make a living doing music instead of having a regular job and just gigging on the weekends. And the idea was, if I could get 1,000 people to give me $100 every year, I'd have $100,000 of revenue. Now, whether that becomes income, how much of it you have to pay in taxes, that's a different story. But what he was saying was, if you have 1,000 True Fans giving you $100, and then he broke that down. How would a musician take $100 from someone in 12 months? Maybe that's a $20 CD sale, a $16 t-shirt sale, a $15 concert ticket, and maybe there's 2 concerts, and then et cetera. And then you've added up to $100 in 12 months. By doing that, it made it not daunting for musicians who are not business people by default. He had a template for them, and a lot of musicians use that to build something to start from. Especially this was the time of CD Baby and creating your own independent music label. So take 1,000 True Fans as a concept and fit that to your business or to your writing project. So let's say I want to write about smartphones, okay? And I'm going to be the smartphone guru. Could I find 100 people who would be willing to pay me $10, a month or whatever it is, $10 a year, whatever the scale is? Then that gets you a number. And then you can say, is that worth my time? So let's say it's 100 people giving you $100 a year. So that's $10,000, right? So would that be fine for you? $10,000 is, $800 a month as a side gig. How much time would you need to produce content enough that those people would give you that? Keep in mind that people pay for the most obscure things. You could create a stamp collecting guide for Papua New Guinea. There's an audience for that. This is what we call the long tail of the internet. And so Substack is a way that people have thought through in which advertising doesn't just pay for the internet. So the New York Times, when they realized, and all these other media firms realized advertising not only wasn't going to pay for the internet, but it wasn't going to pay their bills, they started to put paywalls in place. But that was paywalls for their entire newspaper. So a New York Times paid digital subscription or Washington Post paid digital subscription. What Substack is saying is, no, I'm the Steven paid subscription. My work is important enough, and it actually has to be more because I'm not scalable in the same way. So when you're paying the New York Times, if they have millions of subscribers, they can pay lots of writers. But if you have your own Substack, you're saying it's just me, or maybe you have a team on your Substack, but you have to pay us, which means the $5 a month model doesn't really work. I'm going to need a $50 a month model. Okay. Then ask yourself, how many people do I need paying me $50 a month? Okay. So let's run the math. Let's say I want 25 people paying me $50 a month. Okay. That's $12.50 a month. Can I get 25 people to pay me $50 a month? If you manage to get that, then you can ask yourself, well, I've got 25 people. Have I maxed out, or could I get another 25 people? So when it comes to writing and commentary, it really depends on what subject you're choosing. And I would argue, actually, the nichier you go, in a sense, the broader your market. It's strange to think that way, but it's really hard to compete with travel writers in general. But travel writers writing about New Zealand, writing about South Island, New Zealand, writing about South Island, New Zealand in the summertime. Well, how many people are doing that? And now you could become the authority on that subject. And people will pay for authorities on subjects if you're delivering great value. And this is what I was saying with Palestine Bookshelf. This is not a project I started for my own financial enrichment. The profits from the project, I've mostly been self-funding up to this point, so we're not profitable with Palestine Bookshelf. But when it is profitable, the money for that is going to go to the Palestine Children's Relief Fund, which gives medical care to Palestinian children. So that just happens to be a project that is not a financial one for me. It's a passion project. But if it was anything else, let's go back to my smartphone example or my writing about travel writing in New Zealand, that could become a nice side income for you. And if you work it hard enough, it could become a full-time income. It just depends on how commanding you are of the niche and how dedicated you are. And part of that is consistency. If you look at my YouTube metrics, or you look at the metrics I can pull up my Substack metrics right now, actually. What you see rewarded is consistency. So when I look at paid subscriptions and I look at how it's been, the measure of growth, what you see is a reward for consistency. So you can see the line there, Matt. I don't know how well it's coming across.
Yeah, I can't see the numbers, but I can see the line. There's really it's on the upward trajectory.
And all that is just consistent posting. If you're posting consistently, you can build an audience. If you're just posting once every week, or once every 10 days erratically, consistency wins. Showing up in the content world wins. It doesn't mean your content has to be killing it every single time. But if people know they can come to you reliably for good content, they don't expect you to write life-changing material every time that you write. If you do happen to write life-changing material every time you write, you're going to get to command a lot of money. But if you're being consistent and delivering value, and don't be afraid to ask for money. I think this is the other problem, Alexander, is that people feel embarrassed or ashamed, I don't know, or afraid of asking for money. But you have to ask for it, because if you don't, then you're not giving the people who support you a chance to give you money. Yeah. And I think that's what was surprising. That Substack makes you create certain levels when you start. And I created, there was a founders level. So I just made up a number. I said, okay, I don't know, $200 a year for the founders level. I'll put this and this incentive. And I think within 2 days of adding it, somebody had paid into the founders level. And I thought, nice. Okay. I mean, I didn't have any expectation that someone did, but all I did was I gave someone the chance to do it. Yeah. So if you're not doing things to enable your audience to say yes to you, and that means sometimes Substack allows you to partially gate an article. So let's say the first half of it is free, and you can only read on if you're a paid subscriber. And you can decide whatever that is. Is it $5 a month? Is it $10 a month? Whatever it might be. So Substack, I think, is only growing in popularity. But there are so many different platforms you can use: Patreon, Subscribestar, whatever it is that you choose. I just happen to be a big fan of Substack because I love it as an omni platform. They allow you to post video, basically social media, like X type posts. It's a universe within itself. My criticism is it's a universe within itself, that there's not a lot of external traffic coming into Substack. It's a wall.
Kind of like Udemy, where it's like if you go on Udemy, it's like that's.
It's got great SEO. It's got great SEO.
Yeah.
So if you're searching for it, people can come into that walled garden.
Yeah.
But generally, Substack is busy creating Substack, and so they're drawing people in, and that's what drives your audience. But I wouldn't be committed to only one platform.
Yeah, that's cool. I haven't actually heard of Substack before. Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's a very, among the platforms I use for Palestine Bookshelf, that's the most militant one.
Yeah,
the people on there do not mess
from
around.
Like day two. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, so that's
good. Yeah,
that has 16 paid subscribers, and that's producing. The incentive I've given for that channel is they get one. Every week they get early access to the videos that are being dropped. So they get it 4 or 5 days ahead of everybody else, and they get one private Q&A per month, which is not released to the public.
Yeah.
So I made that up. I didn't know whether anyone would want that. It seems that people are happy with that for now. Maybe in the future they'll want different incentives. But Alexander, I'm very hopeful for people who want to write or make commentary, because the internet has normalized paying creators. I can tell you, when True Restoration started, that was considered crazy. You want me to pay you? This is the internet. The internet's free, bro. You think we're going to pay you money? Well, True Restoration is still a paid model many years later, and now it's normalized.
Like and if something if it's valuable enough and it's good enough, even if it's really niche, like as an example, something really random I bought. One of my hobbies is like I make music stuff, so like classical music, let's say, just with virtual instruments. Anyway, one of my friends was like, "I check out this guy, some random European guy. What he does is he's like an orchestral film music producer. Like he makes up the scores, and also he makes it so that on the software he's got these little template things." Anyway, I went in his funnel. $300 later, I've got like, he's got this little book on how to do like different moves or different scenes and all these different files of how you can just drag and drop these little clarinet melodies and harmonies. It's like most random thing, but like I paid for it because in that moment I wanted it. And he was really good at that one thing. And I'm like, I want that. So, you know, that people pay for random stuff as long as it's valuable and it's solving a problem, it's providing that value. So what I'm gonna
Matthew, you're touching on something I want to end with on that, which is the idea of info products. So with another writing and publishing project I had, it's been sold to different owners now, but it is called The American in Paris. It's not dead. I just don't own it anymore. But originally it started as a blog that was free content. Then there was so much good content that people started to hire me to help them with their visa applications. So that was a private consultation offline. People kept asking the same questions in consultation. So I created a video course so that people could buy the video course instead of doing a private consultation. I priced the video course cheaper than the consultation. And then even cheaper than I created a book. So you're allowing people to come to you on whatever level they want. Do they want a $29 book? Do they want a $250 course? Do they want a effectively $400 consultation? Let them come to you, but you're still selling the same expertise. And the original funnel is a website with a bunch of articles that rank on page 1 of Google and position 1 in many of its titles, because we were, let's say, first in that particular category. So I'm surrounded by examples of writing and commentary that have become monetized. So that's why I'm so optimistic about it. This isn't theory for me. I've seen it happen. And
yeah, so maybe for Alexander and anyone else thinking that, maybe reach out to Stephen directly if you want some tips or something, because I could see that model being, if you don't know what you're doing, I could see you taking a long time to actually get success with that because of newbie mistakes, for lack of a better term. So you've got a contact here who's succeeded. Maybe reach out. What I'm going to do as well, so we're probably actually not, Stephen, I've got a few more questions. I don't think we're going to get through talking about the gurus and the books today, but I think actually responding to the comments is better. Bit of we're catering to the demand.
Respond to the market. We'll have to immediately change the title of the stream afterwards.
Yeah, I wonder if I can. Yeah. What I'm going to do, this is a good question from oh dear, it's so big that it's gone into 2. What I'll do is I'll just show the first part of the question for now. This is a comment on our previous video from Michael here. What does it mean for a young Catholic man to take full ownership of his life while still recognizing God as the ultimate Lord of his destiny, career related? And how do we discern the line between hard work, ambition, and surrendering to God's providence, knowing when to push harder and when to let go and trust him for success? So my response is, I'm still trying to figure that out myself, but Stephen, I don't know if you've got any response on that.
I love the frame that the young man is taking here, in the sense of you can balance providence and ambition by realizing that God created you with the personality you have and the drive that you have. As long as you are doing things in their proper order, you can count on following that ambition. So for example, if you are, and I'm not trying to give spiritual advice, I'm only relating this to myself. So regular disclaimer, your health disclaimer, this isn't health advice. Financial disclaimer, this isn't financial advice. So I'm giving the spiritual disclaimer. This is not spiritual advice. Please consult a priest. The idea for me would be saying a 5-decade rosary every day is a bare min. So if you're not doing that, but you're, making cold calls to potential clients, that doesn't work. So you can't say, I want to be ambitious and I want to do these things, but I'm not putting in a rosary every day. So, well, then what's the point of all this? So what are the bare minimums that are in place for my life, whether I'm in business building mode or I'm in business success mode? What are those? Define those for yourself. And then give yourself milestones. So for example, if I'm going to hit this in revenue, guess what? I'm going to pray more. So you don't get to decrease. So, okay, well, if I'm doing a 5-decade rosary now and we're only at 30K in revenue, well, how about when I hit 60K, I'm going to do 10 decades. How about that? How about escalating? So it isn't just your pocketbook that escalates, you escalate with our Lord. So that's what I look at when I'm talking about pushing harder, when to let go and trust Him. Well, if you're going to increase in the natural order, you better increase in the supernatural order as well. So if 5 decades helped power you when you were starting up, well, you're going to need more power to build and scale. So you're going to need more spiritual power as well. And as I say, I'm just giving examples. It could be Stations of the Cross. It could be more meditation. It could be any other things that you would want to look at. But you have to, the natural balance is, what is your personality driving you to? There are some personality types, and Matthew comes from a larger family than I do, so he's seen more variation in this way. But there are some people in your family who are not ambitious. That's okay. God did not make them that way, and there's very little that they can do to suddenly become ambitious.
I mean, if everyone started their own business and became entrepreneurs, who's going to work for the entrepreneurs? You can't. It's not going to work. You need both.
Well, I remember. I still say that even the people who work can still have side gigs. They can still have side businesses, right? Because we fundamentally, traditionally come from a society in which everyone had a kind of business. Jobs are a very new thing. So the question isn't whether everyone can start a business, but how does my personality type deal with this? So you can be an unambitious entrepreneur and still be successful. So you could be you could be a flag entrepreneur. And I'm just thinking through the implications of that. But I believe that it just means that the flag is more conscious of, well, I'm going to use a partner here for this, or I'm going to have a key employee do that to help me.
I was going to say, like, ambitious flags can be dangerous because they can be so unaffected, and they can be more strategic. Like, oh, no, I'm not going to do that initiative, which is going to work really hard, because I can probably get a better result by doing this thing that's easier. Whereas colorists can be like, I don't care if it's hard, I'm going to charge through. And then you realize, maybe that wasn't the best leverage. So I think, yeah, ambitious, or let's even not move the word ambitious, but let's say flags that are just like, I want to achieve a goal. If they actually do it, they can be dangerously.
Matthew, I was going to say that might be the line of the stream for me, which is ambitious flags can be dangerous. I really love that idea. I love that concept. I did manage to change the title of the stream to Business Q&A Part 5.
Oh, good. Okay, excellent. Yeah, that is good. And what I was going to say was, just to answer this a little bit, we've got one more question, then we'll wrap up the stream. But Stephen gave some good insights. One thing I found, especially being married with kids now, is what I found helps is kind of prioritizing. So figuring out what's the duty of state and what's the hierarchy, what's the priority. So my wife has a term that I've done in the past, probably still do a little bit, but getting better at it, which is maybe getting too involved, too obsessed with the project. She calls it a single person mindset. Like, you're married now, you can't adopt a single person mindset. So you can't just have a 10-minute dinner and just rush off to the study to work on the project. That's a single person mindset. And it's actually true. Like, it's like, oh yeah, like, I don't think it's in line with my duty of state to get up early, work on my side business, start working on the day job, have a 10-minute lunch and go back to the day job, smash that out, go to dinner, have 5-10-minute dinner, go back to the study. It's like, okay, that's not going to work. So it's like, okay, we can still do the side business stuff. We can still be really good at the day job and all that, but maybe figure out how to make it fit within duty of state. So that's one thing I'm still working on, but it does help.
Well, I mean, the only thing I would push it back on SP on this would be that that's not even healthy for a single person. While that isn't, like, you could say, an option for a single person, it isn't a long-term it's not even really a short-term option. If you're doing that for an extended amount of time, young bodies can put up with it, let's say, for a more extended time than older bodies. But this goes back to what I was saying. What are the bare minimums you're going to give for yourself? Can I say 5 decades of the rosary? eating, and this is something that the French taught me, it's one of the pleasures that we owe ourselves that is a reasonable pleasure. That I can sit down and enjoy this cup of coffee, and I can enjoy this tobacco, or I can enjoy this plate of, this cup of soup or this sandwich or whatever it might be. That it's not just something I have to get through so I can go back to quote unquote what's important. This is what's important. This food is important.
What's
This
the Roman
rosary is
saying? Do what you're doing, or focus on
right.
what you're doing.
Age quod
Yeah,
agis,
yeah. There
right?
you go.
That this is what matters. And so if you if you forget to live your life while you're on your way to your goals, then what is the point? That the idea isn't that one day I will do this. What are the bare minimums that I'm going to give to that I'm going to mandate for myself, so that as I channel my ambition that God gave me, or I channel the gifts that God gave me, along the way I'm setting minimums, and then I escalate those minimums as my success escalates. So
Yeah.
taking full ownership of your life, you have to do that. That's a requirement. Recognizing God as the ultimate Lord of your destiny, you have to do that. That's required. But that idea of hard work, ambition, and surrendering, that just has to be in line with your bare minimums. And that should be clear to you from the beginning. And have that in consultation with your priest and your spirituality, the way that you pray. For some people, Lectio Divina is more helpful for their meditation versus divine intimacy. For some people, Stations of the Cross is better than the Rosary. For some people, meditation is better in the morning than in the afternoon. There is no correct. What matters is you taking your personality and your spiritual advisor's input into making something that makes sense for you. And to Matthew's point, single person mentality, when you're with when you're part of a marriage and then you have children, those have to take significant bites out of, or they have to take significant realignment of what you were looking at. So I suppose that single person's mentality, my reframe would simply be don't have any other responsibilities mentality.
That's how you say it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's good. I think, and we'll move on to the last question. So I'm going to put this in see if I can put this in the chat as well. As here we go. So from Michael again, today's hustle culture says your worth is only in your productivity. How's this? I'm not sure if you mean how's this as in do they say this, or what's your view on the concept of hustle
Or
culture?
it could be the variation on crickets. How's that?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's stupid. It's not. It's not the Catholic approach.
So I'm going to use the term toxic productivity, and this is the idea. Now I say this, and I just showed Matthew a Kickstarter that I backed for a Melbourne-based company that makes a Pomodoro timer. I just crowdfunded one of these.
So a Pomodoro timer, for people who don't know, the Pomodoro technique is this productivity technique where you basically have a timer that goes for, let's say, 25 minutes, where you're just in deep focus. Then the timer goes off. You have a break for about 5 or so minutes. Then the timer goes off again, and you're back into another round of 25 minutes, and it just cycles. That's the Pomodoro technique. So,
and this is built around the idea of research that your productivity or your engagement attention goes down over time, not geometrically, but arithmetically. So it's a more gentle slope. But the idea isn't, oh, I'm just going to sit here, I'm going to study for 4 hours. Anybody who can go back to their school days, they can tell you, is studying for 4 hours really as good as maybe studying for 30 minutes, taking a break, studying for another 30 minutes, and you're resting your brain and you're allowing that information to settle. Whereas if you're just going at it for 4 hours, you may feel good that you're getting stuff done, but are you really? And so when it comes to productivity, it can't rule your day. You can't come back and say, well, because my day wasn't productive, it was a bad day. You have to give yourself grace. But if you're not ring fencing yourself in, once again, with your personality and with your goals, then you're not getting things done. And Pomodoro is just related back to Atomic Habits, another book that we will talk about in a future episode when we actually do talk about business books, that it allows you to put a reward at the end of a habit. So it's called habit stacking. And that allows you to get through something not pleasurable, so you get to something pleasurable. And something I've done for workouts, I always tell people, I said, I do 60 pull-ups on workout days. I don't want to do pull-ups. Every time I get on a pull-up bar, my body says, we don't have to do this. Stephen, we really don't have to do this. So I never want to do pull-ups, but I want to be strong. I want the outcome. I want what my body feels like after a workout. The reward that I have is I have a protein heavy meal after. Well, my body knows that's coming. So we get through the workout and we know that at the end of that workout, I'm going to get a reward. So I put something pleasurable behind something not pleasurable to get there. So Pomodoro, it gives you that break. I'm working hard right now, but I know there's a break coming. When the break comes, I can relax for a little bit, whatever that break is, and then I can get back to work. So productivity is measured, you could say in Pomodoros, if you're a Pomodoro person, or by lists, if you're a list person. There are many different systems you can use for productivity, but you will have to measure that and then hold yourself to that. So let's go to the list technique of David Allen from Getting Things Done. So he would argue, Allen is going to argue to do the most difficult things of the day first. So if you have 3 things on your list and say, if I accomplish these 3 things, I'm basically done for the day. Everything else. Now, keep in mind, those 3 things might be create presentation for client, and that's 4 hours. And then the second thing is have difficult video conversation with employee. And then, the third thing is, write terminating email for vendor. So when you say something like 3 things for the day, those are Allen and other productivity gurus would argue, if you do those 3 things, the day is won and anything else is gravy. And if these 3 things are not done, then you failed productivity wise for the day. It doesn't mean you failed for the day, but productivity wise, you failed. And all that means is I can reflect later and say, what led to the failure in productivity? And it could be, oh, I was wrong. I thought this was going to take 4 hours. It took 8. So the failure was I underestimated the time. And then you realize, oh, it wasn't a productivity failure. It was a timing failure on my part. So I'm taking a long way to answer the question because I really just want to focus on how productivity works. Because as Matthew says, I fundamentally reject the premise that hustle culture says your worth is only in your productivity.
And I'm a bit of a former, definitely I would say a productivity junkie, and it has served me well, but I've had to refine it. And I think I'm going to use your favorite quote, Stephen, start with the end in mind. I think it's like that with productivity. What do I need to achieve this week, this day, whatever it is, and work backwards? So therefore, what do I need to achieve today? Or I like to plan my next day ahead because I don't want to put my mind in strategy mode in the morning, then go straight to tactical mode, especially when my coffee's not kicking in, my brain's not at full capacity. I'm going straight to tactical mode in the morning. So I use strategy mode the previous day. And I'd say as well, I actually really rate that. I think you said the Allen technique, which is get the most important thing done first, or also known as swallow the frog. Well, that's more about getting the thing that you don't want to do first.
But it's related. It's related. And what, avalanche versus snowball, there's no correct answer. So some people like to get 7 little things done and they feel that and they're like, okay, now I'm going to take that on.
I think it changes as well. Like I've found some days you're like, cool, or some you go, all right, we're just going to get these big things done. And then you might, as you're planning your next day, go, I've got all these little really annoying things that are starting to loom over my head. So why don't I spend the morning cranking through and dealing with those little things so that on the big thing, I've got more clarity. It just changes each time. One thing I would like to say, and this is something that I've probably more recently gotten better at, is that let's say you might set milestones or goals for yourself, things to achieve. Like Stephen said, you might not achieve it. What did you misunderstand the timing? There's something happened in your personal life that has made it challenging. Don't be attached. I've had to learn this the hard way. You don't want to be attached to achieving an arbitrary goal. If it's not arbitrary, like there's a deadline. We got to meet that, or this company is missing out on 50+ million revenue. You're going to have to push through, buddy. But if it's a case of an arbitrary deadline where I wanted to achieve it because I wanted to feel good and I want to feel like a legend, well, that's just arbitrary. So if you need to push it or you need to delay it and you've got a good reason for it, and you could be honest with yourself and say, look, I could achieve this thing today, but I'm already burned out pretty much. So it will take me 2 hours in my current state to do this, but it doesn't need to be done today. But tomorrow I can do it in fresh eyes and probably do it in not kidding, 10 to 20 minutes with fresh eyes, why don't I just do that? So I think that that's another thing, is to understand what is the purpose of the productivity, and is this an arbitrary thing you're imposing upon yourself, or is it legitimate? Like, maybe if you're honest with yourself and say, no, I just need to toughen up and do it. I just want to delay it because I'm being lazy, then do it. But I guess don't be arbitrary about it. Does that make sense, Stephen?
Yeah, well, I was going to say one more teaser for a future book discussion will be The War of Art. And the author talks about the sense of resistance.
Sorry, the War of Art or the Art of War?
No, The War of Art.
Okay, you got
the sort
not
of
Sun Tzu.
No, it's the difficulty of creating art. The war of art. Like, it's Stephen Pressfield. He wrote Gates of Fire about the 300, and he's a great author in other ways. But the War of Art, what is it that's preventing me from getting my work done? And one of the things is resistance. What is it? And so sometimes, Matthew, I just want to take a different frame from what you were commenting on, which is, why is it that I'm seeking to do these 7 other tasks other than doing the one thing? And sometimes you can then say, why is it that I don't want to do this? And the answer is resistance. There is something that is pushing back. And whether that's psychological, this is too hard, I think it's going to take too long, I don't really have confidence in myself, you would need to address those root causes as well. So sometimes doing those little things are part of removing excuses for yourself so that you can't confront the resistance. So sometimes those little niggly things are you're putting them up, like, well, okay, I'll get to work as right after I send this email. Okay, great, good. You sent that email? Okay, how about this other thing? Oh, great, you've knocked out those 7 things. So now you're going to start it now, right? And then you say, oh, I don't really want to do it. Good, now we're going to confront why is it you don't want to do it. But either case, it's a sign of resistance. That's perfectly natural. That's never going to go away. The resistance always comes up when you're creating things, when you're building things, when you're in business. The question is, how can I confront that resistance and work through it? And sometimes that's by eating the frog and doing the hard thing first. Or sometimes it's, I'm going to knock out all these little tasks. And sometimes I need those victories to then say, all right, fine, I'm ready to do it. I didn't want to do it this morning, but I did knock out these 7 other tasks. So now I'm going to do it. So give yourself grace. There isn't one way. Sometimes you need to reset. Sometimes you need to get you know what, I'm going to do this tomorrow. I'm not in the right headspace for this. I'm not encouraged. Don't force yourself to do something that doesn't make sense when you're not feeling like it. The best thing is not going to come out.
Yeah, no, agreed. Well, I think that's an hour and 12 minutes just by getting through questions and comments. So I'm pretty happy with that, to see people's engagement. So everyone else, we're going to wrap up the stream now, but if you do have questions, place them in the YouTube comment, even post this video being published, because as you just saw, those last 2 questions we answered were actually comments on the published YouTube
previous
video.
one. Yes.
So yeah, the previous one. So we do look at them. If you want them to be answered, pop them in there. And we're really just probably, Stephen, going to go through it on a chronological basis. First in, best dress, basically.
Right.
So
but we'll probably skip one episode. So the next episode, we are actually going to do the Books and Gurus.
Okay.
But
we can do it the next. Do a
right.
Q&A.
So please put the questions in, but we will get to them in a future episode. But thank you for those who were on with us live. And, if you're watching later, as Matthew said, please feel free to put the comments in. We'll do our best to respond as quickly as possible. Thank you for taking the time to be with us, Matthew. Thanks for, we're not as time zone compatible as we were this summer, but we still made it work today.
That's good. Well, thank you, Stephen, and thank you to the audience. See you next time.